right, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get things started this afternoon. Thanks so much for spending some of your afternoon with us. We're really excited about this webinar, and we have a lot to share with you guys, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. I'm Katie, the marketing manager here at Auritas, and I'll be your host for today. I've been in the tech world for about 5 years now, and I'm joined by two other great speakers, and I'll just briefly introduce them to you guys as well. On the far left of your screen, you'll see Auritas CEO Deepak Sood. Deepak has been a data archiving expert for almost 20 years now. He's presented on numerous topics at various SAP events and regularly contributes his expertise to enterprise business leaders. Next to him, you'll see David Beckley, who's the VP of Strategic Accounts here at Auritas. David has been an industry thought leader in the SAP ecosystem for over 20 years with experience spanning multiple verticals. David has presented at multiple SAP and ASUG events and continues to be a trusted advisor to business leaders across the globe. So now that you guys have gotten a brief introduction of the speakers, I'm just going to quickly run through the agenda before handing things over to David and Deepak. As you guys all know, today's webinar is all about how to stop legacy data from consuming 70% of your IT budget. So first, we're going to dig in a little bit more into that statistic and give you guys a few other numbers that may surprise you as well. Next, we'll cover some other challenges and also business drivers that might lead you to embark on a legacy system decommissioning project. David and Deepak will also share 4 questions that they always recommend clients ask before they start their projects. We'll go over flexible options for migration and storage of decommissioned data, as well as options for platforms, the legacy system decommissioning process, and best practice implementation tips that we've learned over the past 15 plus years. We'll wrap up with touching a little bit on retention management and then conclude with a Q&A. With all that being said, I'll go ahead and hand things over to David. David?
Thank you, Katie, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for spending some time this afternoon with us. Really excited to share some of this content with you as this is becoming a burning topic across the boardrooms in many of my customers. So looking very forward to sharing some of this with you. So, I know we had the teaser at the top of the presentation talking about 70% of your IT budgets. Actually, the number is a little bit north of that. So per Forrester, companies are spending on average 72% of their IT budgets maintaining existing applications. What's really interesting to note here is that of that, 33% of those applications are over 10 years old. So, it provides a level of insight here that as we're looking at things, chances are everyone on this call has, potentially some legacy mainframe applications, some homegrown applications, or some package solutions that have been replaced with a technology refresh. And our idea is, how do we help you to recapture some of that current spend and repurpose it for more innovative solutions and initiatives for your organization. Now at the bottom you'll see 3 logos, so Sports Authority, Circuit City, and Linens and Things. Now unfortunately these companies are no longer with us, and I'm going to share some insight with you that should really hit home. So when we look at the S&P 500, right, when we look at the index, dating back to 1960, the average tenure of a company on that index was 60 years. Now, if you fast forward to today, the average tenure is 12 years. So what is that data really telling us? Well, a couple of things. So number one, it's telling us that even a small company or a startup really has an ability to be a disruptor, right? So a lot of opportunity there to take on a Fortune 500. So if you're not being relevant, if you're not providing the level of service that your customer is looking for, you have a big risk, right? So if you're not adapting, chances are, you have a very high level of risk. But if you are adapting, you've got a really high level of opportunity. So unlike Sports Authority and Circuit City and Linens and Things, we really encourage everyone on the call today to take a look at this and understand that there's an opportunity to gain market share. There's an opportunity to become more profitable and really an opportunity to avoid a lot of risk. Deepak?
Hi, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm going to cover some of the challenges that we look into, when it comes down to managing or maintaining a legacy platform. So, what specifically are we looking at? And many times we look into a question about, what does it take for a company to be nimble, to react to the changing times? And, we all are aware of the situation we are in, and many times we have to make, architectural shift. Right now, we had to all work from homes and react to the situation where you want accessibility to your data and have information available to us. What was the first biggest challenge that you faced? I mean, any kind of, information that was not digitized, that was not readily available, was a challenge. You can't have a paper document available to you. But then, as we are looking at the things further for a large organization, or for that matter, mid-level organization, what are the typical challenges we are looking at for us to react quickly if there is a new opportunity? If you have to look into the analytics of finding a new product, finding a new business process, finding a new direction of initiating a new revenue stream for the company. Well, what happens is that if you look at the enterprise with diverse platforms, including legacy platforms, the difficulty is in finding that information. The difficulty is in identifying and trying to get that information because, number one, it's a legacy application. You do not have the ownership of that application from the resources perspective. You do not have the granular details about how this application is going to be able to pull that information out of that. And also, if you stress this application, would this application be able to react to your requirements? And so there are a lot of risks that come into play. Other pieces for any of those platforms that come into play is compliance and controls. We cannot evade the fact that although we went into the zone of saying, hey, everything data is accessible, data is available for everybody. The new paradigm is, well, companies, you do not necessarily own people's data. So privacy is coming into play. There's another driver that is coming, self-driven by companies, where they want to comply with the country-specific retention requirements. You will find that majority of the companies or the legacy applications are not equipped. They were not built to address those kind of compliance and controls. So what options do you have? Not many. You'll end up retrofitting or doing some changes to it. But again, that will lead you into creating more risk for your legacy application. Accessing the historical data. You want to run the reports. You want to do certain kind of creative analytics. You want to do predictive analytics or artificial intelligence. Well, if your source system is not able to provide that kind of insight at the required time, again, you have a challenge coming. And also, if I say that, okay, now that you have reacted to all of those things and you want to address this piece with a single platform, you will find that also is a challenge from a logistics side. And, how can I say I can, sunset or decommission my applications, but I am going to pick a single platform for doing it, and you are not able to meet those goals. So these are typical challenges when it comes to having a legacy system retirement initiative coming into play. What are the typical drivers? And, how do companies look into it? So ask yourself, if you have looked into a system decommissioning initiative, what is a typical thought that comes into play? The first thing that comes into mind is, this is an application running in some corner of my office or in my data center, and it doesn't cost me much. It's just running out there. Well, the thing is that, when we start, itemizing the things with the fact that it's just running, and if I have to, or I'm going to shut it down, I'm going to start it when I need it. You are basically, discounting the fact that this information that you have in your system, if you need it to access that information, to process that information from security, from compliance, even from a reporting perspective, it is a lot of work because of workforce, because of architecture, system not supported, out of compliance, out of support and all. And that should be aggregated into your cost. And when you start putting those things together, that becomes the actual cost of retiring that application. That will determine the overall ROI of your system. But the challenge is, how do we reduce that overall cost? I'm helping you, or kind of have a vision towards what does it take to decommission that application. But regulatory compliance, industry requirements that are coming, these are all the things that legacy applications cannot support. Your aging workforce, as you're going to find that it is more and more difficult to find COBOL programmers to address those mainframe applications. You cannot address retention requirements, and hopefully you should not be going to eBay to find the parts to keep your servers, your mechanical parts of those systems running. That should not be the case. So how do we now, if we flip that point and we say, like, what are the benefits and the ROI that comes, if you start looking into it in a different way? David is going to explain that for you.
Yeah, thank you, Deepak. So, as many of our customers start to look at these programs, right, and they're not just small projects, they're typically, a strategic program. Early on, I found that most customers were looking at it and saying, well, what are these systems costing me, right? So they had the elements that were easily quantifiable, right? So they would say, well, I'm paying so much for software, I'm paying so much for maintenance and support, I've got hardware costs. And you know what? I can even take it a step further and say these are the costs for my internal resources to support it. But recently, I'd say over the last couple of years, with the change in the business climate, with things like data privacy, at the forefront, these same customers are now saying, you know what? It's not just about those costs that I can quantify. I also have to pivot, and I have to include, risk mitigation, right? So risk mitigation, what happens if I'm not able to access the data to meet the business requirements, right? So what happens if the business doesn't have that data to make, informed decisions in a timely manner? What about, regulatory audits? And this is really the big one, right? So if I have a legislative body or someone else that's asking me, to provide certain data, if I don't have the ability to, really do that discovery in a comprehensive manner and do it quickly, we're seeing customers spend, $6, $7, $8 million just to handle a discovery effort, right? So, it's really about looking at those tangible costs and then also looking about the risk avoidance costs from all of those different elements. And when we look at this holistically, if we're able to reduce the cost, if we're able to simplify our application portfolio, we're able to take a lot of dollars. I think everyone here is probably familiar with what their operating budgets are. If you're able to repurpose a large percentage of that from these, tactical, support costs, you can repurpose those for new equipment, new applications, more strategic initiatives, getting more from your data. A lot of cutting edge things on the market today, allowing customers to run a truly intelligent enterprise. And also one of the things to look at, Deepak, you mentioned this. Some of the mainframe applications and other point solutions that customers may run, we're looking at a shrinking resource pool, right? A lot of these folks have retired. The skills are not available in the market. I face this quite often with some of my customers where they're at risk because they just don't have anyone who has that tribal knowledge of the application. So I have an ask for everybody, actually. After today's webcast, the one thing that I encourage everyone to do is just spend 5 minutes and just do a Google search around data privacy, non-compliance, fines, right? I mean, I did this in just a couple of minutes, right? And what's interesting to note is that if you look on the left, that's an FDA website. So that's the federal government, $18 million fine. Look on the right, Google fined $57 million under GDPR. So these fines for data privacy and non-compliance are actually quite large. And we saw this really start to gain traction with GDPR a couple of years ago. And today we have California Consumer Privacy Act, which is in effect for California residents. Many other states are following suit. So there's a lot of reason here for all of us to look and say, this isn't going away. In fact, it's going to be even more comprehensive. So we need to take a look at these things and factor that into our analysis as we're trying to determine, the best solution.
Yeah, David, I mean, I'll just augment to the statement that you're making that, we still talk about GDPR and CCPA, the California Consumer Privacy Act. But do you know that right now there are 16 states in the United States itself that are enacting their own laws and that are linked with data privacy, and data management. So, well, how does it, impact you? If you are managing any of these legacy platforms, you are going to be in big trouble because these legacy applications would not be able to comply with those needs. Your need in this exercise is to find out how you can either, if it is a legacy application, how you are able to sunset those applications, yet take all the valuable data that you need for the continuity of your business and able to comply with those things. So that could be one of the major drivers that come and address all of those things as we go forward. So if we look into it, like, what should be the questions that we should be asking? Now that, we have an idea that, okay, now this is something that we need to address as part of our go forward strategy as an organizational change that is coming to look forward to the new information excellence or digital governance and compliance piece that comes along that. First, itemize. How many applications do you want to continue to use, and how many do you want to decommission? It's a very generic question, come to think about it, if you look at it, that, first question you're going to ask, what is the definition of a legacy platform? Well, by our definition, we say if it's a legacy platform, if you are making it a platform to access information only, meaning it's a write-once platform, and all your other, active functionality or all your new reporting is being done from another active application that you have in your system, but a legacy is being used for replying to audits, for historical access, comparing that kind of data. So essentially, by my definition, there should not be any legacy platform that should be kept running. But this is more of a conceptual thought process to start with. You will find different reasons sometimes, complexity or just the state the system in or the geographical location of that platform that might require you to keep that platform up and running for another year, maybe. So to start with, this is an exercise you have to do, to find out what platforms are candidates. And many times I work with a very large chemical organization. When we started accounting for all the platforms they have, we found they had over 500 legacy platforms. They were transactional, analytical, content management platforms, and different kind of formats. And I'm going to share with you. But I was, don't be surprised if you find that you have in excess of 100 legacy platforms sitting in your environment that users are accessing maybe once a month, once a quarter, or once a year. Now, then let's account for what does it cost to keep the lights on. And that cost is not just running that system, cost versus benefit as we're looking at. That should also include what does it cost to fetch something out of it, to get some kind of information out of it. And getting information is not the transaction and all. You have new requirements coming in every day. If you have a new requirement where you want to fetch that data or extract that data, what does it actually cost you to get the information? Once you start accounting for that, now that is the real cost of keeping a legacy platform up and running in your system. What are the data requirements? So, you will find in the quantification, is it operational data? Many times you will find operational system versus functional systems are different. when we are dealing with SAP-based audience, we are always looking at the functional or financial data, so to say, out there. But if you are looking at other side of manufacturing, where you might be looking at data that that is linked with SCADA systems. You have data that is point of sales data that is coming along. You might be capturing information like vibration data, oil management, manufacturing details. They have legacy platforms too, and you want to quantify what are those systems, how are they aggregating the data, and of course you can't ignore analytical as well as content management platform. Identify the ROI for that. Then comes the process of, can you create a model where you can say, let me pick a single platform. Ideally, it should be one platform, but many times you find in our services, between 1 and 2 platforms, you should be able to decommission all kind of content, all kind of platforms in your environment. So how do you come to that conclusion? These are all the things that you have to address, from developing a strategy to identifying the owners, to building a reporting functions, to who will be the new users who will be accessing that data. So once you have all of those things all addressed and taken care of, then comes the situation about what are the different things and the different options I have for decommissioning the data. One, in many scenarios, I do propose, I would say for the most part, I do not recommend, as a strategy for doing that, is move your data onto an active platform. Well, if you were going to do that to start with, you would have done it already. For decommissioning a legacy system, you would have moved your legacy data onto your current active platform, but it becomes costly proposition. It becomes more complex, and although it's one of the options, but it is not the most common option that people are going to take or utilize. Second option, store that data in a magnetic format. The way I'm suggesting magnetic format is, keep it in some kind of storage where you can access it later down the road. Again, a conventional thought process, food for thought, how you evolve and all, but you're going to find it has its challenges that come along with that. You store it, and how do you access it later down the road? Do you have to use an application? Do you just use database? Do you want some kind of print functions to see that? Some of those options to think through. Capture it in a low-cost DB. Now I'm going to extend the thought for low-cost DB database for you. You will find that this is becoming a really viable option for many organizations. Why? Because the database, a SQL-based database, non-SQL-based databases, solutions like Hadoop, which is, still, a really viable solution, or new platforms that are coming that are linked with, cloud platforms, whether it is, the Kubernetes-based solutions with Docker, whether it is OpenTable, whether it is Boomi, the query systems and all. These are all viable solutions that you need to think through and say, could those be my options for decommissioning the platform? Then comes certain situations where you just have reports and you want to capture them. It could be just stored into your Iron Mountain as a print paper output, and you want to make sure that you want to not have those systems from a compliance perspective. You could just digitize them, capture them as a report, manage them for extended period of time. Other pieces like warehouse management, you will find the majority of the times you'll end up using a hybrid approach for addressing all of those requirements. Here are some of the pros and cons for addressing all these solutions. I have given you more of a generic, a holistic view of looking at it. But for the most part, you will find that a solution that you want to address has to be addressed holistically from an enterprise perspective. You cannot look at 1, 2, or 5 applications to say, this will be my go-to platform for decommissioning. You want to look at the big picture of all your applications, your current needs, and maybe if you have that, your required audience, also see what would be your future platforms to retire. And based on that, you define your strategy on how to address that.
Hey, Deepak.
Now, yes, David.
So if you could go back there just for a second, a quick question that comes to mind. So, as we're building out this, strategy for decommissioning, right? Can you speak to some of the reasons for building an actual kind of factory approach to this? I mean, what comes to mind for me is you've done your audit. You've determined what systems you would like to decommission. But what happens, when we have situations like mergers and acquisitions, where all of a sudden we're seeing, another 100 or 200 applications, hitting our enterprise? Can you speak to that?
Absolutely, and thank you. It's a very good question that you're asking, and and I'm going to take it, in another angle from our audience perspective also to that. And again, you have already asked the question from their perspective, but they might even ask the question that Deepak, Auritas is coming and building a strategy and showing the value of a platform, but every time we're gonna decommission, are we expecting that Auritas is gonna come and provide services for decommissioning every platform, or is that something that we can take the ownership in house and manage it and decommission it quickly, very efficiently in this whole process? And the answer is yes. The factory approach, David, to what you're referring to, is what we subscribe to. We are able to build processes and models, and we have even process flows to identify how you can pick a solution that will address all your requirements for different legacy platforms. May it be a transactional-based system, analytical-based system, or any other mainframe platforms. And how do you extract? What are the things that you have to look into? Do I extract data at the database level, at the application level, at the reporting level? How do I fetch and merge that information so that there is no mixing of data onto the other platform that you have picked? And how do you do the reporting out of it? We have all these approaches that will help you build a strategy, and you can continue to decommission your system with that particular approach. I'll cover that as I go forward into defining what the platforms are, but you have hit a very important point, and we're going to cover that. This is one example, of Auritas Data Lifecycle Management Solution. We call it the ADLM solution. And this is where we have built a solution that can handle transactional data, analytical data, even documents. But even more importantly out here, it can handle really large volume. So the chemical company that I was talking about, we started with their requirements of really large number of data, as they were going through the M&A work, and then they were also divesting certain part of their systems. They said that we have these requirements where we would really want to decommission those systems, and we have really large volume of that data. Even more importantly, when we talked to their users, both business and IT, they said, we do not know what our future requirements of accessibility are. Meaning, will we use this data for doing certain kind of advanced analytics? Would we need it for privacy reasons, for audit, for legal holds, or legal disputes and all? We have not quantified what kind of information is required for what kind of data access request that is going to come in the future. So this is what one platform we built for them, and we helped them retire the first 7 applications, and they took the ownership, and now they are well on their way to address up to 8. They have addressed so far about 80% of their platform on decommissioning using this solution. It's a very robust solution, and as you can see, this is built on a Hadoop-based platform. But that said, as I have mentioned, that if you have a requirement where you want to use native storage, Azure Blob or AWS storage or OpenTable from Google and all, or a BigQuery, you are able to do all of those solutions as your base platform for storing the information and reporting onto that data. How does it come? You're able to, capture all of that data. You are able to store all of those details onto a single storage solution. You can pick your choice of the reporting platform. So, conceptually, and I have a couple of slides later down the road, but as we are discussing, I'm going to give you this insight. You are always looking at system decommissioning process as a 4-step process. Extract your data from the legacy platform, there is always going to be a requirement of transforming it. You will find that the format from the mainframe does not jive with the new platform. So you want a process which can automatically transform the formats and the date fields and the decimal pointers to the new functions or the new storage location that you have. This is ideal for you to consume the data in as you go forward in the future. So transformation comes into play. Then comes storage. You can also say loading or storing the data onto the new storage device. For example, ADLM could use Flume or HDFS for the storage, but there are multiple options for storing that data. And last but not the least, you have to report onto that data. So how do you report? How do you access if there is a new request coming, new report requirement coming? How do you do that? And what kind of analytics that you can build out there? This is all that we are addressing and making sure you load the data, have a compressed storage of that information onto the storage solution, and you should be able to report onto that data in the best way possible. But not only that, if there are retention needs, privacy needs coming, optimization of the performance, all of those things should be addressed with that solution. So you should not be looking at, well, this it can do, and the other thing, we are still in a puzzle. You have now solutions available for you that can address all of those things with one storage solution all coming together. David, you want to add something to it?
Yeah, so I think what's worth noting here, Deepak, is that we're talking about a process and a platform, and one of the key elements that I see today, again, I'll go back to this. It's around discovery, right? So audit requirements, etc. As we look at the volumes of data that companies generate, right? We've always been, for the last decade plus, it's been capture as much data as possible, provide, a competitive advantage, from that. But today we're seeing, a paradigm where we're not allowed to keep as much, and there are stricter regulations on that. So to find that data across disparate, applications and databases, etc., that's a very cumbersome task. And so the discovery element is key. And also, what do we do once we've found that data, right? We have to be able to, apply retention policies to that. We have to be able to, create legal holds for any, lawsuits or litigation purposes. And those are, some of the key elements that, really make ADLM stand out, right? Because it addresses all of those unique requirements.
Great. So another option that we are looking at out here is the journey using ILM solution. So SAP itself has provided you with the capability of doing system decommissioning. And there is a product called SAP ILM that can help you decommission your active data. But also in this whole process, you're also looking at decommissioning your legacy system. So in this screen, as you can see out here, you are first looking at decommissioning your active data, but secondly, you are able to decommission your active SAP systems and also decommission your non-SAP systems. So it's a licensed product from SAP, but is able to address all of those needs for you, using the SAP product solution. SAP also has, now using SAP Cloud Platform, a functionality to store and manage the data onto their SAP Cloud Platform. This is where you're looking at managing documents using SAP Document Services. They also have other storage mediums where you are able to store and manage the blob data. So again, my exercise out here is to provide you with the capability statements. What are the different options? What are the different platforms that are available to you? But that said, what platform will address holistically for all of your needs? This is still you determine as you go through this process of analyzing, blueprinting, picking a holistic solution, and addressing it all together. Here are some sample areas, what you can look at, where you are able to do reporting around different solutions, whether it is Crystal reports, Tableau, Power BI. I'm sure you're all exposed to different kind of platforms and functions all listed out there, but I'm not suggesting that you have to use all of those reporting platforms, but I'm saying any one of those reporting platforms will be able to address your needs for all of your legacy platforms if you are able to build a holistic approach towards doing that. Here is the sample schematic that you are seeing in the screen, where how we are able to capture the data from a legacy database perspective, capture that information, store it onto a storage solution, build your search functions, and do your reporting. And even if you have to export that data onto a third-party storage, you should be able to do all of that in capturing a reporting format out. Now, let's look at that piece from a process perspective. We have looked at the options, we have looked at the platforms, we have looked at the functions. Now let's look at the process. David, do you want to take,
Sure.
You want to address those pieces?
Absolutely, Deepak, thank you. So, when we touch on the topic of system decommissioning, one thing that comes to mind is that, the best thing to do is, if I don't really have a business need for the data and there's no, regulatory or industry requirements for the data, let's just, dispose of it and shut the system off. Obviously, the easiest and safest approach, but the chances that will be your situation are pretty small, right? So I would say maybe 3 or 4% of those applications would, that you may have would fall into that category. So what does that mean? Well, when I start to look at it, it's a little more complex than, just simply shutting something down, right? And what makes it complex, right? So the data, obviously, a lot of different, complexities with data. So, transactional data, our master data, looking at, linked files and attachments. What about customized data, reporting, requirements? A lot of these things that, we're going to have to, consider as we're evaluating options, right? So first and foremost, we typically start with looking at, what's the application landscape, right? So this is kind of the process that we follow. So what systems do I have? What are the operating systems, right? What are the applications, the DBs? What about our file formats, right? We have to take a look at these elements first, right? So once we do that, we really get into what I call the application portfolio review. And this is an area where you're going to have to bring certain stakeholders to the table. You're going to be looking to understand, well, what is the functionality that this application is providing, right? We talk about the cost element, right? So we're going to look at the cost element, and I've broken that out into the tangible, right? The quantifiable. So the maintenance, the license, the resources, the infrastructure. And we look at the technology, right? Is this even a viable technology any longer, or has it, reached its end of life? So we talk about it, some old mainframe systems, et cetera, that would fall into that category. And then finally, we look at it and we say, well, what about resources? Do I have staff internally, to work on these things, or am I going to have to try to go to the market to find, some augmentation, resources for the specific application? So a lot of different elements that we look at during the portfolio review. And then what's even more critical is the data review, right? So four key areas here, right? So first we look at, well, what are the operational requirements? What do we need to run the business, right? Then we look at audit. So what about our audit needs? Whether it be around finances, whether it be around materials or sales orders, or all different areas. Compliance, and compliance could be a couple of things. Can be regulated industry requirement. It can be compliance from a data privacy standpoint. And then finally, legal requirements. If we have a strategy in place to, sunset an application, and we have a strategy in place to, methodically destroy that data when it's reached its end of life, we also need, the ability to place hold on certain records and documents and so forth, at the order of a court, right? And that is a key element. So these are all the core pieces that we look at during the data review. Deepak, did you want to add to that?
I think, David, you have covered it well from all the different angles that you want to address this data as we move forward. But as we go further, you will also find what should be the different storage locations. As we move towards the shift towards whether we want to move to on-premise based solutions or a cloud-based solutions, there are a lot of diverse options that are available. How should we be storing that data, whether it is a flat file, relational database, XMLs, or managing content using PDFs or certain other compressed formats? Again, all of those technologies, processes comes in designing these solutions. And last but not the least, how do you report onto that data? Whether it is building custom reports, ideally, you do not want to create custom report for any requirements. Can you have a process where you are able to build drag and drop functions and create outputs quickly? But even a step before that, are there any ways you are able to capture the existing reports and quickly able to deliver them from the new platform? These are all the things to be thought about. And there are now solutions that are available to address those requirements. Capturing the information electronically, and on the right-hand side, as you see the tools that can be leveraged for replying onto that. CDW that you see on the top is the cloud data warehouse solution from SAP. But then Hyperion, Business Objects, these are all the different tools, including the Tableaus and the Power BIs that can help you report onto that data quickly, efficiently, and with the minimum expense possible in your environment. We also have tried to put certain kind of processes around it, like how do you have the process coming along, process 1, 2, 3, and 4, where you capture the data, you review your data, you itemize your reporting requirements, and eventually when the expiration, the retention requirement has been addressed, how do you dispose that data? So here is one example. Here is another example where we have a sample system, a reporting platform, and we can use a tool like an SAP IQ, like a cloud data warehouse, or like some other inexpensive solutions that can host your data and then do the reporting out of it on as-on-need basis, both for data as well as documents. So what does it take to put all of those things together? These are the things that you're looking at, starting with discovery to find out what are the things, who, and what are the decisions that we need to make out of that. Then comes the next phase where we are designing the whole process around it, building it and testing it, and then going live with this process. This is a recursive process that you can deploy, and we have done it multiple times over, and we'll be happy to share those details with you, how you can put it all together. Once you have gotten the process and the control, you can rather rinse and repeat multiple times for multiple legacy platform in your environment. But before you get there, you want to evaluate, you want to build a process or a matrix around what solution will address all of those requirements for you holistically. Here is a sample organization that looked at their drivers for uninterrupted business continuity, audit readiness. And I'm not going to read all the line items. And we built a matrix for all of them. And as you can see out here, we have built a solution that can address different tools having different requirements. How do they stack up and what are their rankings? And we build a ranking model for that also to prepare that matrix. So it takes the question of pricing out of the picture. It takes feature functions and the adaptability, the ability to adopt the solution as very quickly, all in a matrix that you're able to address. So here are all the different options and their details that we share to put all of those functions together end to end. Now, what are the things that you will say if I have to address in a big picture, whether it is an ERP system, a non-ERP system, a document management system, or a reporting system that you want to address from a process perspective? You're looking at step number 1, defining your policies from a retention management perspective, defining your rules around what are your retention requirements, not only for your specific country, but it could be state, divisional level, or it could be across different countries. How can you incorporate those policies into the system? So we are writing some options to you. These are all example options that you can leverage using information steward, using the ILM, and how you're able to, these tools are all able to address your building of rules and policies.
Deepak,
Yes.
let me add one comment there. So as I think it's important to note that when we're working with customers, one of the most difficult components of these types of projects is getting the data owners and legal and others, on the same page around those policies, right, and rules. And just a little tip, kind of a pro tip here, is that when you start to get into that phase of your evaluation and laying out your program, bringing a certified records manager to the table really helps to accelerate that process and takes a lot of the pain out of it. And so that's one key piece that I think is worth noting.
Great, thank you, David. So we build a policy, we find where the data is and how we want to manage, and here are the tools that can address all of those things in a holistic manner. I'm listing the major tools out there. There are a lot more, tools that can objectively compare, but I'm giving you the common examples of how all of those functions can work together. And finally, from a retention management perspective, from privacy perspective, what are the tools that can actually govern, that can actually address those things from compliance, from disposition perspective? These are all the tools that are listed out here. So these are all the things that comes into play in making a decision process. I'm going to give you some examples around now. What are the extraction processes or the implementation processes that come into play here? Just like the earlier example that I've talked about, you're looking at extraction, transformation if needed, storing the data at the right location, and reporting onto that data. This function is able to address your needs from all the different databases that you're looking at. Why did I list the databases, applications, the different formats and mainframes and unstructured platforms out there? You will find many times, you have to have certain kind of RFC connections, the ODBC drivers, or certain other areas where you want to fetch that data from the system and then build a process of decommissioning. We have already done this exercise for all of these platforms, all of these databases and all. And not only that, we have a list which is a lot more exhaustive than what you're looking at in the screen to address all of those needs. So this is just an example of all the different things and the systems that we support. The idea behind is, ideally, we should be able to build a single platform, cloud or on-premise, where we should be able to extract the data from all these diverse applications that you have, and then you build a single platform to do the reporting on the top of it. It is entirely possible, and you are able to do it. But I'm going to give you one more paradigm in this whole situation. Let's come back to an SAP system, and you say that I have got all these legacy SAP systems, and I do not necessarily want to build another new SAP platform for reporting onto that data. Can you build a process where I can keep the data outside somewhere, but my active platform is able to report onto that information without merging that data? And so this was one unique requirement. Some time ago, we felt one customer asked, and then this requirement was echoed multiple times over by even other customers. So this is exactly what we built. We said, okay, well, let's pick a legacy platform, SAP platform in this case, extract your data somewhere, but your active platform, could be S/4HANA or any of those platforms, should be able to report onto that data. Here are some sample schematics that we did and implemented, 4.7 system, 6.0 system, different kind of HCM platform that we did. And as you can see, I'm showing you some sample examples where this customer had multiple platforms from different regions, and all we did was we built a custom transaction that is already up and running, and we said, okay, well, we're going to create this output, and you're going to get the pop-up based on the different search criteria. The system will search those details and provide those outputs for you. Not only that, you're also able to see the linked documents. So not only you're able to decommission your active SAP platform from a data perspective, but also from a document management perspective also. So all of those things are, you are able to address, decommission with a pretty strong ROI in your environment that comes into play. Now, here comes the process of how we can help in this whole process. David, you want to cover that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Deepak. So, as we were talking about, doing the assessment, right? Doing the research, building out the scorecards, et cetera. We do that for a couple of reasons, but one of the most important is that we want to identify what are the high value targets, right? So, which systems are really costing me the most? Which systems are really exposing me to a lot of risk, et cetera, right? So that way we can build a sequence on which applications, are decommissioned first, second, third, et cetera. So what I'd like to talk about is, how we can help you through this process like we've helped others. So first, we offer a complimentary assessment. We're offering it just for those who have attended today's session. I'd be happy to help you with that. So if it's something that you have an interest in, Katie will be sharing contact information with the group, and we'll move on from there. But it's certainly a lot of relevant information that would be specific to you and your system landscape. Second, your legacy data, right? So, we are truly focused in data and content management, right? So I'd like to offer up for the attendees today, I can provide you with a lot of guidance and thought leadership, on anything data or content management related. So if it is, system decommissioning, if it is getting ready for, a big upgrade or a migration to, a new SAP platform, I can share a lot of information with you that will be very relevant, that will, translate into some, pretty sizable cost savings. And finally, we're here to stay, right? So we have been working with a number of our customers, and I think we have, about 320 active customers right now. And we've been working with a lot of them in different capacities for, over a decade, right? So we're helping them with data management, volume management, data quality, system decommissioning strategies, et cetera. So we really look forward to the opportunity to meet with you individually. We look forward to the opportunity of providing you a complimentary assessment and helping you to build out your roadmap for the next several years. Katie?
All right, awesome. Thanks so much, David and Deepak. We are going to go briefly into our Q&A, but I noticed there are quite a few new people here, so I just wanted to briefly go into who Auritas is. So a little bit about us. We've been around for a little over 15 years now, and we were founded in 2003. As you guys can see, we're based here out of Orlando, Florida. On the next slide here, you'll see the Intelligent Enterprise slide from SAP, which I'm sure quite a few of you on the call are familiar with. You can see here that the Intelligent Enterprise features three critical components: the application layer, the analytics layer, and the data management layer. At the bottom of the screen here in the red, you'll see that Auritas fits perfectly into that data management layer. Most of our solutions leverage EIM, ILM, and ECM technologies. We're actually the only company that can handle your data quality, data volume, data privacy and compliance, data governance, and linked document management needs. Typically, a lot of our customers that come to us will face challenges around reducing their database size, ensuring compliance, and or trusting the quality of their data. At Auritas, we like to say we make customers clean, lean, and compliant. We also do handle unstructured data through our partnership with OpenText for maximum business insights. And lastly, a few of our more popular solutions are data archiving, legacy system decommissioning, SAP Data Hub, and data privacy solutions. So with that being said, we'll jump over to the Q&A here, and we've got a few questions, so I'll try to get through as many of them as possible. It looks like the first question here is, we have a number of legacy systems. How should we decide on which one to retire? And David and Deepak, I'll let one of you guys take that one.
David, if you don't mind, I'll take that. I think, this is a starting point where we have itemized that you do have the legacy systems. But, as we covered in the slide deck, that the important piece that comes into that place is that you want to look at those legacy systems in a holistic manner. It is not that you want to start a big bang process of decommissioning all of those systems. You want to build an approach that can address all of those legacy systems. And again, you can start small. You can see the proof of success by decommissioning, say, 4 different diverse platforms. One could be the transactional based platform, second could be analytical, third could be a document based, and fourth could be a mainframe. So you do that, and once you have learned the lessons of how this whole process works, you can replicate it for all the other platforms. But the starting point is the approach and the solution that you're going to pick should address all of your legacy platforms to start with.
Awesome. Thanks, Deepak. And it looks like we have time for one more question. And it looks like this one says, what is the best way to get started on my legacy system project? And David and Deepak, I'll let one of you guys take that one.
Yeah,
David, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
go ahead,
sure.
David.
So I would say that the best way to get started would really be with the assessment that we're offering for today's attendees. So we will come in, we will help you through establishing that process, looking at the applications that you have, helping you document kind of the framework for determining the high value targets, et cetera. So that's really the first step, and would be very happy to help each of you with that.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks, Deepak and David.